Okay, so apologies for if we get cut off abruptly. I've got some little issues with Zoom, but I'll do some video editing afterwards. I'll just bring up my PowerPoint presentation. And I confess, I'm traveling at the moment. I've been in Jersey for 5 days. And now I'm in Guernsey. I've come back to where I've got an art studio on the farm, and I'm picking things up and then going back to England. Plus, I'm also working on the exhibition artwork for the summer. So I'm a bit scattered mentally and haven't thoroughly rehearsed this PowerPoint presentation. So I apologize for that. But so today, the 29th of March, 2024, we transition from the days of Ash into the days of Hawthorn. And that's actually the transition moment then from the first ACMA of the Owen to the second ACMA of the Owen. So from the first quarter to the second quarter. And we're going to look at law, how it relates to the classical deities of Aries, and how that might shed light on looking at the Celtic deities of Aries as well. But before I move on, this is our third year. Just very quickly, if you want the basic lore of the Hawthorn tree, go on the Owen Grove YouTube channel and just put Hawthorn 2022. And if you want herbalism for the Hawthorn, look for Hawthorn 2023. So this year we're looking at gods and goddesses. So the second ACMA then goes from bottom left-hand corner, hawthorn, oak, holly, hazel, apple. And apple holds the position of the summer solstice. So we've just come out of the spring equinox with the ash tree, and we're still rising. We're rising upwards and the leaves are opening. There's foliage on the hawthorn tree right now. And by the time we get to Beltane, all of the trees will be green, literally in the next 4 weeks. It's just everything is rising, the sap's rising, the trees are blossoming and blooming. It's a wonderful, lovely time. So there's a general story for each ACMA. And the story for the second ACMA is all about Beltane and what you could call the rites of May, often told in a story of two heroes fighting over a maiden who's the spring goddess or Mother Nature, May Queen, or so on. So Hawthorn is that dangling carrot, if you like. She's the beautiful promise of the May Queen, who has yet to be achieved. She's not achieved until Beltane, but she makes her first appearance, if you like, with the days of Hawthorn. There's a Welsh story in the Mabinogion called How Celtic won Olwen, and Olwen is the daughter of a giant called Ysbyddaden Pengower, the chief giant Hawthorn. Hawthorn is the chief of giants, and his daughter is Olwen. Olwen means white tracks, and wherever she walks, little white flowers appear. Anyway, as soon as the hero, who's a version of Lugh, as soon as Celtic hears Olwen's name, he doesn't even see her, he just hears her name, and he falls absolutely in love with her, just by hearing her name. So Hawthorn is that promise or the heart's desire of the would-be hero. But the days of Hawthorn are not lovely, they're a testing time. And the Brigantia with the Hawthorn tree are all about the testing, scary challenge ahead, if you like. But the days of Hawthorn here go from the 9th degree of Aries to the 27th degree of Aries. It takes us roughly just past the middle of April. So it makes Hawthorn completely Aries. Now, the ash tree beforehand was half Pisces, half Aries. It was holding a yin and yang balance between a water sign and a fire sign. But Hawthorn is completely the fire sign Aries. Oak, when we get to the days of Oak, are just a little bit Aries and mostly Taurus. So Hawthorn is all about the star law of Aries, the ram. Now, as beautiful as the May flowers are, the symbol of the May Queen in lots of English folklore, it hides quite nasty thorns, you know. And so the Brigantia, the Irish word kennings for Hawthorn, the word for Hawthorn is uatha, or just uath, apparently translates as fear, as in terror, frightening, fear. And the word kennings are an assembly of a pack of hounds, because of all the sharp teeth of all the hounds that have gathered together for a hunt. All those sharp teeth are like the thorns of the hawthorn tree, but also that pack of hounds is ready for a hunt. Something is afoot, something challenging is afoot, and there's going to be a test, you know, for the young warriors. Another Brigantia is the blanching of faces. That is, the faces are white with fear because of the thorns, you know, that there are potentially vicious times ahead with the stabs and the fighting. And the third Brigantia is most difficult at night, because you can't see the thorns on the thorn bushes at night time, you know. So it's about this, the hidden spikes, the ferociousness that makes Hawthorn a challenging tree, a testing tree. If Kaluk wants to win Olwen's hand in marriage, he has to confront Uspathaden, the chief of giants, Hawthorn. So we'll look a bit more at the Celtic law shortly, but the star law right now, if you look at the bottom here, it says Aries. So Hawthorn is completely Aries. And the other constellations in the Aries portion of sky are Andromeda and Perseus, which is the basic thing then of the young hero achieving the maiden. Perseus rescues Andromeda eventually, you know, sets her free from being tied and eaten up by this kraken and the Leviathan and so on. But it's very much about the youth, the would-be hero, and the challenge of proving himself. So Uspathaden, the giant Hawthorn, gives a load of impossible tests to Kaluk. If he wants to win Olwen's hand in marriage, he has to achieve a whole load of impossible things. So it's this testing time, if you like. Now, if you look back on the previous videos of this year, the first ACMA, we've looked at a different treasure of the ancient world, and some bit of star lore with each session, and it's accumulating as we move along. So with the ash tree, the last video that we just did, we were looking at something called the Celtic Mercury. And by looking at Mercury, we looked at the first of the wandering stars. So you've got fixed stars, which are the constellations. And to the naked eye in the ancient world, there were wandering stars, but we now know those as planets. So Mercury, the planet Venus, the planet Mars, and so on, were seen as stars that moved around. They called them the wandering stars. And with the second ACMA, especially with the days of Taurus and onwards, it's all about Venus and the movements of Venus. And we'll approach that more probably in the days of oak. But this diagram here is work in progress. I put it on the Facebook group earlier today, so you can go and look at it yourself. In the middle are the 12 zodiac signs and the Greek and Roman gods and goddesses that were fixed to those zodiac signs, if you like. So, for instance, then with Aries and the Hawthorn tree, completely Aries the ram. For the ancient Greeks, that was Athena, the goddess Athena, and for the Romans, it was the goddess Minerva. So the sign of Aries the ram belongs to those goddesses. And so this chart is there on the Facebook group. You can look at the 5 trees we've already looked at, and I've kind of glimpsed ahead, but I haven't really studied the next 15 trees too much, but it's there to look at. So the rest of this presentation, and I'm going to try and be quick in case I get cut off, but the usefulness for us trying to look at Celtic iconography of the Roman Empire, because the Celts didn't make great long-lasting statues of their gods and goddesses. They seem to have worked mainly in wood and clay. It's not until they're Romanized that you start getting gods and goddesses carved in stone and having inscriptions. So they're Romano-Celtic iconography, if you like, apart from a few exceptions like the Gundestrup cauldron. So we're forced to look at things through Roman eyes. Now, with the British Isles, certainly Britain more than Ireland, because the Romans didn't conquer Ireland, but a lot of the British goddesses, the Romans considered to be Minerva. So then very loosely, very vaguely, you can kind of look at Minerva and her position as Hawthorn, as Aries, to try and make sense of some of the British Celtic goddesses and so on. So that's what we're looking at with this diagram. Also then, in the middle, there's a shamrock, and this related to the Celtic Mercury, who I speculated in the last video is Lou Ogma Dagda. It's just a working theory at the moment. But then moving forward into the days of Hawthorn, pondering who is the Celtic Minerva, just like we pondered the Celtic Mercury. But it would take us into other star lore of wandering stars. So we've been aware of this thing for a while, and I still don't know what to make of it. But the Ogham consists of 4 interlaced pentagrams. And it seems to be quite deliberate as well. Now, the thing is, the pentagram is of Venus. So the dividing the year into 3 with the shamrock is mercurial. Just got to think, I'm up saying I'm running out of time. That's annoying, and I can't get rid of it. Okay, so if we get cut off, we'll start again. And I'll carry on with the presentation with where I'm at. We'll talk about Minerva and Athena and so on. So famously then with the pentagrams, there is the evergreen pentagram, the dark green one, and the golden rose family pentagram, and they interlace with each other. Now, Hawthorn is part of that rose family pentagram, along with blackthorn, heather, and rowan, and so on. Now, quickly too, Aries, Hawthorn, governs the head. And we've been through 6 months of darkness, and with the ash tree, we've done the salmon's leap and come out of the darkness into the 6 months of light, very much like salmon coming out of the water into the sign of Aries, which governs the head. And now, curiously then, with the Greek mythology, Athena was born out of the head of Zeus. And Minerva was born out of the head of Jupiter. You know, so they personify Aries, the head, literally. And as a goddess, Athena Minerva represents thought and clarity and wisdom. Her symbol is the owl of wisdom, and so on. So the motifs then of Minerva, we can look at those to try and make sense of some of the Celtic stories. And more often than not, Minerva is depicted with a helmet and a spear, and that's how Brigantia is depicted in northern Britain, with the helmet and the spear. So Brigantia is one of the Brythonic goddesses that the Romans considered to be Minerva. Intellect, thought and clarity. But her symbols, if you like, of the spear and the owl are motifs that appear in other stories. So the famous story in the Mabinogion of the goddess Blodeuwedd involves two would-be lovers fighting for her. It's a garbled story of that Beltane story, and she gets turned into an owl at the end of the story. We'll go into it more with a discussion further on. But the star law of the second ACMA, and I'm hoping you can see this picture. I've got a white window blocking it. But a recurring story then is that Lugh, in Irish tradition, defeats the main god of the dark army, Balor of the one eye, and Lugh with a sling takes out the eye of Balor. And Lugh elsewhere is described as having the long arm. Well, that's the constellation of Orion next to the constellation of Taurus. The constellation of Orion has this long arm raised up above his head, and he's either throwing a spear or a slingshot. But the key detail in the story is taking out the eye of the monster. So that happens with Lugh against Balor. It also happens in how Celtic won Olwen. Eventually, Celtic throws a spear right through the eye of Uspathaden, the chief of giants, you know, defeats him and wins his daughter. And so this recurring star law motif is there in the second ACMA after Beltane, between Beltane and summer solstice. And it's directly opposite Samhain. And the star law opposite of this is the canonus figure of the Gunderstruck cauldron holding a serpent and a torque. It's a corona borealis and the serpent's head. So the two duality heroes fighting over the goddess, Oak King, Holly King, or the hero with the long arm piercing the eye of the monster, is opposite the antlered god, that Samhain. That there's a kind of duality of seasonal consorts, Summer King, Winter King, Oak King, Holly King, battling for the May Queen and Hawthorn. And so that's told in the Blodeuwedd story with her two love interests who fight each other with a spear, you know, and she turns into an owl. It's the Minerva iconography, making sense of the seasonal Beltane May Day patterns, if you like. So I'm suspecting I'm going to get cut off very shortly, and don't worry about it, but do your best to come back with the part 2 link that I've sent to you. This wonderful head is a head of Minerva from Bath, where she was equated with the British goddess Sulis. So the Roman name for Bath was Aqua Sulis, means the waters of the goddess Sulis, and they were hot, fresh water springs. So Minerva can be thought and intellect. She's a protective warrior goddess. She's poetry, but she's also healing waters. And from a Celtic perspective, as much as there's much interest in a moon goddess in the Western magical tradition, looking at ideas of Diana and Artemis, with the Celtic goddesses, they're not really lunar. They're not really moon at all. I can't think of any definite examples, but what they definitely are with Rhiannon and Ellen and Anya and Maeve, you know, most of these Celtic goddesses are solar. They're sun goddesses. They're golden rather than lunar. So, you know, it's just something to be aware of, that, you know, this Minerva figure from Aqua Sulis, these are the healing waters of a solar goddess, hot waters coming out of the ground. That was equated with Minerva. I'll shut that down so we can start talking. Can everybody see that white window that says running out of time? Was it just me?
You get that window because you're the host. So
Right, and I can't, it won't let me shut it away.
how long is it? How long
It has now. I've got rid of it now. I don't know, maybe 5 minutes left. But for me, it obscured most of the images I was flicking through.
I have a question quick while you had that Brigantia up. She like Minerva, Athena, she has a breastplate. There's a, with Minerva, or with Athena, it's the Medusa. What is that little face on the breastplate of that Brigantia? Do we have a iconography for that?
It's classical Greek mythology, isn't it? It's the Gorgon's head. And
right, but the Brigantia one, it's very tiny.
Yeah, Brigantia has it on her chest, definitely. Yeah, she's dressed up like Minerva.
Perseus holds the head of the Gorgon.
Sorry, Franklin?
Perseus holds the head of the Gorgon.
Yes. Yeah. And what's interesting is Minerva, Athena and Minerva, they help warriors achieve impossible tasks. So Minerva helped Hercules. Athena helped Hercules, you know, and the whole story of how Celtic won Olwen is the same sort of story of Hercules achieving 12 impossible labors. Celtic has to achieve these impossible things, but he's doing it on the orders of Hawthorn, chief of giants, rather than Minerva. But it's still the young hero having to achieve a whole load of impossible things to win the maiden. It is the same as Perseus rescuing Andromeda. He has to get Pegasus to do it, and so on. He has to defeat Medusa
to hear this because
to get Pegasus to rescue. Carry on.
I'm getting different angles on this and so much extra. Thank you.
It's not concrete, but I think there's some evidence that Taurus, the bull constellation, may also have represented the boar to some Celtic tribes. So with the story of it's a prince that's been enchanted into a monstrous boar.
Yeah.
A silver comb in his hair. But he's also accompanied by 7 piglets, which are the Pleiades.
You got it.
Oh, the Pleiades. Oh my God, that is amazing. All right. Yeah.
The head of Taurus the bull could also be a boar's head and 7 piglets. Yeah, same.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Because the Celts didn't hunt bulls. The bull was a domestic animal, but they did hunt boar. You know.
Yeah.
So Orion the hunter and whatever he's hunting could be a boar and 7 piglets. In some of the stories.
Absolutely. And the local saint, Branach, he was told when he was thrown out of one place by the demons, he was told that he had to follow, go and find a place where the sow and the 7 piglets were, and that was where he had to build his church. So that's also interesting, isn't it? That connection with the Pleiades.
That church might have a landscape connection with the constellation.
Yes, I wonder, isn't that? Oh, that is bringing me out in goose flesh. Thank you.
The Pleiades was thought to be the central sun, and that our sun was orbiting the center of the Pleiades was thought to be a star called Alcyon, and our sun was thought to be in orbit around Alcyon, and that was what was responsible for the precession of the equinox in an ancient cosmology. So the Pleiades is like a central sun.
Oh my goodness, what a lot of amazing information. And was it supposed to have cracked up or exploded or something, and then
That I don't know.
to make it into the 7 piglets or the 7?
Well, it's really interesting you're talking about this, because I was going to be really quiet about everything because I feel quite quiet at the minute. Because I experienced this dragon rising up in where it's marked on the centre of Great Britain, as I've explained a few times, and the aspen trees there, and the All Hallows, and I don't know how I missed this, but it's where the 3 rivers join, so it connects with Gary Bincliffe's book, and so you've got the Ribble runs from the east, the rising sun, to the west, the setting sun. But in the meantime of it running, it does a bit of a kink, and it's joined by the Hodder and also by the Calder that comes from Worley, the centre, the divine feminine centre, as Gary Bincliffe says it on. And it's where the 2 rivers join. I saw this dragon. It just rose out the water. I only found out this week that if I wasn't, and it was in moonlight, so moonlight was coming at me, I only discovered that if I hadn't have been stood on that tree, I don't know what tree it was, if I hadn't stood on it and the moonlight hadn't been hitting me, directly behind me, where the Hodder meets the Ribble, is the Tolkien Trail. It's the Tolkien Trail. And today I've just been looking it up, and you've got Hobbit Hill, you've got and I also looked the direct line from the Ribble to where I was stood, going all the way through, hits a cross, and it's a Celtic cross. And apparently, in that Tolkien land, there's 7 crosses hidden. There's a house there with 7 bedrooms, which tells dream time. There's 7. Oh, and when I saw the dragon, I stood on this tree and I went, let me join as above, so below. The Pleiades and this temple within the water, that I could see this vision. And all of a sudden something went, whoa, 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 and just rose up. But what's interesting, Lord of the Rings is directly behind me, Tolkien land. Everyone's talking about the Pleiades just now, and all I've been doing all day is looking into this number 7 and the Pleiades.
Here's another pattern with the Pleiades and Taurus, the bull, then with the winter stars and the summer stars. So the winter hexagon is the Taurus, the bull, and Orion. So you could think boar and 7 piglets. They're at the base of the tree, and at the top of the tree are the birds.
The boar's Orion. Sorry, did you say that Orion and the winter hunter's got the dogs, hasn't he?
Orion and Taurus, the bull, are also the boar and the 7 piglets.
Yes.
So
yes.
if they're at the base of the tree, then the 3 birds are at the top. So in the story of how Celtic won Olwen, in the story of Blodeuwedd, Cly, the Summer King, gets killed with a spear, and his soul flies away as an eagle, and he's found at the top of an oak tree, and he's decaying, and his rotten flesh is falling down to the bottom of the tree. So you've got this eagle at the top of the tree and a pig eating the rotten flesh at the base of the tree. It's the eagle and the boar. It's the summer stars and the winter stars above and below.
Okay,
Wow.
so you've got the summer triangle and the winter triangle. And what's interesting, 2 days ago, the third owl flew over me at the same spot when I drove the car. In the past an owl, you just mentioned an owl. I'm just sitting here in, so piglets and
So lovely.
So the
Wow.
owl is a symbol of Minerva and Blodeuwedd.
Yes.
why is
Yes.
that?
I have a friend that lives in the forest and she helps me. She's one of my helpers. And she has had the biggest horned owl she's ever seen in her forest by her home in the mountains. And we're not known really, as far as I know, to have horned owls, but she's actually seen it. And she's seen it fly off the tree, and actually this huge mighty tree shook. So I think that's really awesome that for days now she's had this visitation of this giant horned owl. You know, I mean, like almost like science fiction size, you know.
It's also mating season.
It is. You're right. You're right. And he's been doing a lot of hoo-hooing. So he's probably looking for his girl, you
No,
know.
hoo-hooing is for dinner.
Oh, okay. Well, he's been noisy.
But
But
I just
No,
want to err on the side of caution in case we get cut off. So I'm going to stop recording now, and I think we should do our meditation before we get cut off, and we
Okay.
can carry on talking after the meditation. But this story of Beltane and Taurus and the Bull and the Pleiades is going to go throughout this whole second ACMA. So we'll be revisiting it with the oak tree, with the eagle and the boar and that. So that it's going to be the recurring theme of this second ACMA.
Yeah.